Grayson Grundhoefer, SicEm365.com recruiting analyst and also 365 Sports football analyst, joins us on the show. Grayson, thanks for being a part of the show. So where are they, Baylor, with the two coaching, the assistant coaches, both outside linebackers and Collins, and also looking for a new cornerbacks coach?
I think they're getting close, guys. I especially think that with the cornerback position, losing Kevin Curtis, a guy who's been at Baylor for a long time, and Caleb Collins as well, the edge coach. I mean, it's interesting to see a shakeup like this, and I know it's one of those things where those positions definitely could stand to improve, but you also look at it from the aspect of Curtis and Collins are both really good people and have done good things in their time at Baylor, but I also think there's an opportunity to shake up the coaching staff a little bit. And we kind of saw that really help out Baylor during that 6-game winning streak when you look at guys like Mason Miller and Jake Gavital, Keenan Hall coming in last year. I think they're getting pretty close. I think the cornerback coach spot is probably the one that's going to be that we'll probably get an answer to first. And then we'll see on the second one. But I've been able to talk to a couple of the commits as well. And these guys were close with their position coaches. Kamarian Morgan mentioned that, it's been tough to see Caleb Collins leave, but, also really trust Dave Aranda and Keenan Hall and this coaching staff. So there's nothing to worry about there, but it's one of those things where it's like, these guys built some really good relationships all the way through the recruiting process and with the current players on the roster. And so it's difficult to see these guys leave, but I do think Baylor will have an answer soon to fill those positions, especially with enrollment coming on January 17th.
What do you how does this affect roster building right now at those positions?
It definitely hurts. The good news for Baylor, at least, is they've already taken 2 edge prospects. One of them's already signed. Amarian Winston is the lone commit that is not signed yet from the transfer portal. So we'll see on that one. But 2 guys that kind of, pledged to Baylor already. And so that helps. But then on the flip side, the cornerback position, it's one of those that, they only brought in 1 guy on a visit. And they were anticipating bringing in a couple guys during the second period. They haven't quite done it yet. We'll see if they get to it, by the time this weekend is over. But I do think it has stalled that process a little bit. And for obvious reasons, right? You want to get a coach locked in, but then you also want to allow that coach to evaluate the transfer portal and take the guys that fit what he feels like they need the best. And that's kind of where the standstill is right now, especially as far as cornerbacks go.
Would you say there have been any significant losses in terms of guys that they wanted or were very interested in that are now off the table?
Get ready for epic savings at Best Buy. Right now, you can save up to $700 on select Alienware and Dell gaming products. Perfect for leveling up your gaming experience. Plus, grab the latest Android Google Pixel at an unbeatable price. Don't miss these incredible deals. Shop now at bestbuy.com and upgrade your tech today.
That's a good question. I think anytime for Baylor that they bring in a guy on a visit, I would say that if they don't land that guy, then it is a miss. And so, if you kind of look at it, they've missed on a few guys who have committed elsewhere, like Ty Buchanan, who the Texas Tech transfer, he ends up committing to Arizona. That's where he's going to go. I do consider that a miss, even though, there's other circumstances with the portal when it comes to NIL and, playing time and things along those lines that can change conversations. But I think he'd be a miss. I think Chasen Johnson, who ended up, he committed to SMU, and then he ended up going back to UCF. He was one of Baylor's first guys they brought in on a visit. I'd consider him another miss just because it was very clear he was kind of a priority, as he was a priority for a lot of schools. So those guys, we're still waiting to see what Benjamin Bell does, the Texas State edge, but it seems like things there are trending elsewhere at the moment since he's kind of taken his time after the Baylor visit. So those are the 3 guys that haven't committed. They've landed 11. So I think they've done pretty good.
Grayson, back to the coaches with Collins out and then Curtis out. And there was some disappointment. The secondary, not just the LSU game, but they did not have a great year as far as the corners. Players were running free. This is Aranda when he can be kind of a silent assassin. He wasn't afraid to make moves. I'm not so sure the Ron Roberts move was the right move. He's made moves at the coordinator positions before, and he's also almost had to, because otherwise you have to look around the room and he's the only one left to blame. Is this kind of a surprise? Is this kind of something we did not know much about him, but we now know he is not afraid to slice and dice when he needs to?
I think it's a little bit different than that. I mean, I think we got that answer truthfully when he, made the change with Ron Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you mentioned it, and I know that we can debate whether that was the right move or not. But in general, that is a guy he absolutely trusted, a guy that he had a long-standing relationship with, and he moved on from. And I think that's as telling as anything. And then, of course, Jeff Grimes, who comes in, has an amazing, 2021 season with Eric Mateos revitalizing the offense. And then, he fires them 2 years later, basically. So I think we've gotten that answer already. And I think, some of this is you need to make changes schematically. You need to make changes within the room to bring in someone who maybe fits what they're trying to do from a coordinator standpoint. But then other times, I think some of it comes down to, are you stagnant or not? Is there progression? Are you seeing it in recruiting and on the field? I just think there's a lot of things that go into this. And when you made those moves last year and saw how, well they paid dividends, I think it makes sense to go out and try to find some more guys who are very impactful like that. And we'll see. We'll see if he's able to find similar guys or guys that can really provide an upgrade to the staff.
Grayson, Corey Gordon went to Louisville. Were you surprised? I mean, I know we talked about it as kind of a surprise when he left, but he had visited Alabama. Are you surprised that fit a little bit?
Not really. Louisville, I think, was the number 1 or number 2 transfer portal class last year. They really hit NIL really hard last year in football. They were up there. They took in a lot of guys. They were, spending a lot of NIL, and I think that makes sense. For Corey, if he wanted to go play a bigger role than what he was going to play at Baylor potentially, it makes sense, right, for him to go find playing time, potentially go find different NIL opportunities. That totally makes sense to me. And then on the flip side, Baylor going and getting a guy who was very highly rated in Tyler Turner. I mean, we're talking about a composite 4-star guy who everyone in the country wanted. So they replaced Corey Gordon with a guy like that. It makes a lot of sense, I think, for both sides. And so Baylor able to go out, find a guy who's got a lot of upside, who's got some NFL upside based on his recruiting profile, another blue chip guy to add to their secondary, definitely makes up for the loss of Corey Gordon, even though Corey gave them some really good moments a year ago, or this past year, I guess.
So, Grayson, if you're a Baylor fan listening right now, what you should be on the lookout for here over the coming days or weeks in terms of just kind of what they're eyeing and what they're setting up?
So, as far as the portal goes, the thing is they're kind of running low on spots right now. So we'll see kind of what they decide to add. We know they were in on Noah Thomas, the Texas A&M transfer prospect who ended up at Georgia. And by in on, they were trying to get him on a visit. That did not happen. He literally entered the portal. I believe he had a do not contact tag, and he ends up going with his former wide receiver coach, James Cooley, to Georgia. And so that's where he's going to be. So a miss there for Baylor. They're still looking for an outside receiver. That's been very evident. They've been pretty aggressive, but also pretty, I would say, stealthy, trying to find the guy that they can get at that position. So that's still one to look at. Cornerback, of course, has been mentioned a lot. They're going to continue to evaluate there. The good news at cornerback is there's a lot of guys available. There's a lot of guys still left in the portal that are very quality prospects. And so they're going to have a chance, whoever the new cornerbacks coach is, he's going to have a chance to go in and try to add some guys. I wouldn't be surprised if they just add, a couple more secondary guys, whether that's cornerback or just somewhere in the secondary, just to kind of round out this class. Now, aside from that, in the transfer portal, there's other positions, right tackle, maybe add a defense lineman that we could talk about, but that's pretty much set on that end. But I do have some news for the 2026 class. I reported this earlier on Sic Em 365. Lots of people have been at the Navy All-American game practices, and composite four-star prospect Jordan Clay out of San Antonio Madison he's one of the prospects in this competition. He's going to be playing in this football game tomorrow He is down between right now Texas and Baylor. He's going to take visits to other places, but those are his top two schools right now. I got to talk to him today after practice, and he's really excited about what he saw from Baylor at the end of the year, the offenses, changes and success. His relationship with Dallas Baker has been very key. So that's just one thing to keep an eye on. Obviously, for Baylor to land a guy, kind of of that build like they did in this last class, Jordan Clay definitely fits that, and he's a guy that's definitely a top priority guy. And right now, Baylor and Texas, the top two schools.
Last thing, Grayson, thanks for your time today. Big 12 basketball. Iowa State is obviously incredibly good. They hammered Baylor as expected, in fact, last weekend. Kansas is really good. They've played with their foot a little bit. And then Houston is kind of coming around, and they've had to go through some injuries, but they got what they got, and it looks pretty good doing it. Baylor, a little bit of a soft start. They have Arizona State on the road. No game's easy. They beat, of course, Utah to start, just hammered Cincinnati at home, and they were ranked 16th at one point, and then got smoked by Iowa State. Your thoughts about where Baylor is, and will Langston Love ever play more than one or two games in a row?
This is one of the weirdest starts to the season for this Baylor team, because they're doing a really good job against teams that are similar in talent-wise, so somewhere in that 10 to 25 range. They're doing really good against those teams. Anyone below that, they've been kind of running out of the gym if you're below that. And then you look at when they play really good teams, and specifically when they play on the road, they have had so many problems. And just getting, the problem is these games aren't competitive. So it makes you think, when they go to the NCAA tournament and play a really good team, what's that going to look like? You'd like to say this prepares you for that, but they need to show more fight than going on the road and losing by 20 to Iowa State. Like, they have to find it somewhere in the middle, make these games more competitive as the season progresses. They have opportunities for that, specifically against Houston a little bit later in the year, and of course against Arizona as well. I think that's going to be a tough environment. But I think in general, this Baylor team is one of those teams where, they could finish somewhere between, probably 3 or 4 all the way to 8 in the Big 12. And I don't think they can finish higher than that, at least at the moment. I just don't think you're going to be able to pass specifically Iowa State and Houston. So maybe they could get to 3, but it just seems like that's going to be a very tough ask. As far as Langston Love goes, I think he's the difference maker in whether this team can really reach their goals, potentially compete in the Big 12 championship picture, potentially compete in the Big 12 tournament, and then, of course, competing in the NCAA tournament. They need someone like him. His size, his experience, his leadership, his ability on defense. It's something they absolutely need, but they only need that if he can get 100% healthy. Yeah. And if he can't get that, it's going to be hard for him to get on the court. It's going to be hard for him to play. So you might as well just continue to kind of pace things out until he's 100% healthy, because we know when he is, he's an absolute X factor for this team.
Yeah, I remember when they had to go through the constant just, what will L.J. Cryer be able to do tonight, And it kind of seems like the same thing on the different personalities and maybe reasons. But thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend, Grayson. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Grayson Grundhoefer, Bearcast with Craig on Tuesdays, and then also his the premium section of SicEm365.com if you're a Baylor fan, loaded with a lot of different nuggets, and tidbits, and visits, and all that other good stuff on recruiting.